What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing a 2-round 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. As I'm reevaluating players, it continues to change, so it gives you a little bit of a hint as to exactly what I'm thinking. This is not based on me just dragging players up and down. This is actually a reflection of my actual scores. So if you guys have already watched some of the other videos I put out, which is actually a top quarterback video as well as top 41, kind of 42 corner video, which just dropped last week, so go check it out. You guys can actually have a good reference point when you see someone between two players, what their score is going to be. But I'm right now trying to reevaluate the defensive interior class, and my opinions have actually, like, some of them are like right in line with the community, and then some of them differ quite a lot. So it's going to be extremely exciting to see that. If you guys want to see my opinions evolve over time, as well as see some all 22 clips that support my conclusions, go to that link tree, go to X. You're 2 clicks away from going away from there, or to our sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy, which gets you up to $1,000 when you sign up. So feel free to use that code, or just use the code HAILMARY when you sign up. It's the top link in the link tree. Let's get into this though. Jacksonville Jaguars at number 1 overall. I think just the easy choice here is Travis Hunter. And for me, I don't think Travis Hunter is wide receiver 1. I don't think he's corner 1 either. Again, feel free to watch my corner video to understand my exact thoughts on Travis Hunter. But when it comes to Travis, I think that, you know, someone made a beautiful point. Like right now, he's being overhyped because, you know, he plays 2 positions really well. But at the same time, being able to have a full drive off, essentially, to be able to prepare for the next one, understand your mistakes, look at the tablets. That's something that he hasn't actually really had. He gets to prepare in the week off, but not really have that rest and game preparation. So it is possible that Travis Hunter could become even better when he becomes more fixated on a particular skilled position. So I think that's the best counter I've ever seen to the conversation of, hey, you know, Travis Hunter might not be number 1 overall worthy because, well, he is not the best wide receiver and he's not the best corner in this class. I think that's a really, really good point. And the fact is, you know, he's going to have the endurance to play the full game and play 100% the whole game, especially if he plays one side and maybe a couple reps of the other. So for that reason, I actually still feel comfortable going Travis Hunter at number 1 overall. I would have debated, and maybe after another week or two, we could discuss it, trying to explore other options. But at this particular moment, I just think it makes a little bit too much sense to be able to go Travis Hunter, especially now that that counter is out there, and it was actually a really, really logical one, which is why I also ask you guys to be able to comment. You guys can tell me I'm full of shit. Like, it's okay. Be a dick, just don't be a dick about it. That's what I always say. Like, if you're going to tell me I did something wrong, or, you know, I'm on crack or something like that, feel free to, but at least explain why and explain what you would do instead. Because for me, if I did make a mistake, call me out on it. I'd rather make a mistake once and understand how to fix it than just continuously make that same mistake. If I just hear you say, oh, crap, Titans pick. Okay, well, why? What did I do wrong? Because you guys are a fan of one team. I'm a fan of 32. So I want to be able to understand. That's why I love you guys. I respond to every comment as well. So I try to soak up as much knowledge from you guys as possible. I only have a limited amount of time, and so do you guys, but you guys fixate on one team, which is why I just love you. I love you guys to death, and it makes the job fun, right? If I ended up making these videos and got 1 million views and then didn't respond to any comments, it'd be less enjoyable than where I'm at right now, being able to talk to all of you guys. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate you guys. It helps out the algorithm, but I mean, I don't really think there's going to be that big of a difference between whether I respond to you or not. I just actually personally love it. But at number 2 for the Giants, you know, you're obviously going to be probably going to go after one of the 2 quarterbacks. And I ended up posting this on my Twitter page about, or I guess X, about Brian Dable electing to continue with Tommy DeVito. I said Danny DeVito. But I honestly think that it's a fireable offense. And you might say, like, well, him not playing Drew Lock is a strategy to tank. I think that in the sport we all love, purposely tanking is, I think, a very unethical, in terms of business, very unethical way to go about it. I think that you can play Drew Lock and shank a player too. And you know what, like, that's, you know, it's still kind of murky waters, but electing to go with a significantly worse choice or significantly lower probability choice of success to just get a better pick, I think should almost be on the grounds of disqualification, because you're purposefully saying, I'm going to lose. And I know that you fans are like, yes, please lose. We want a better pick. And that's a good outcome. I think you'd still get that outcome with Drew Lock, but blatantly choosing to be able to, like, blatantly choosing losses is something that could be reviewed by the NFL and could be seen as something that could take away your first round pick. We saw it, if I'm not mistaken, like, we're talking about like tampering and all this stuff, but like the idea of tanking with, if I'm not mistaken, I remember the Dolphins had that conversation, right? And they ended up losing their pick. So keep that in mind. I think it's an unethical decision. I ended up being able to see Brian Dable stand right next to him there in Mobile, Alabama, and I personally have nothing against the guy. He seems like a cool dude, smoke a cigar, like drink a shot, like, you know, like he seems like a dude who I could sip some whiskey with. And same thing with Joe Shane. Like, I would love to be able to just kick back, like in Malibu, you're listening to the waves on Nobu. Like, seems like a cool group of dudes, right? Some guys who I definitely would love to be able to know on a personal level. But professionally, I think it's unethical. So regardless of all of that, Cam Ward's going to be my pick. I think a new regime is going to come in, and I think that they're going to want to attach themselves to a quarterback that has that higher end ceiling, has the mobility advantage, has the arm talent advantage, and I think they're willing to have some growing pains in terms of the processor. My only concern with Cam Ward is that he's played so many snaps, so many years, and he still hasn't gotten over the hump of making poor decisions. He makes some beautiful plays, and they are jaw-dropping. He's my QB2, and by a very close margin to QB1. I think you guys understand that. But when it comes to Cam Ward specifically, he's played so long that the decisions, the mistakes he makes are almost head-scratching. So it is my one counter for him, is like, on a consistency basis, not really there. But if you're looking at the high highs, it does make a lot of sense to roll the dice. At number 3 for the Raiders, this one is a pretty self-explanatory one as well. With all the connections, everything just lines up that Shedeur Sanders should go to Las Vegas. You need a quarterback as well, and based on the fact you brought Jimmy G in, you also brought in Gardner Minshew. I think Shedeur Sanders is this platform of quarterback that you guys are trying to go after, so the athleticism standpoint isn't necessarily like what you guys are really honing in on, and I think Shedeur's a better processor. I think his actual high-level throws, even though he doesn't have the exact arm strength to be able to consistently hit those windows in the NFL, I think that those high-level plays are something that I think can translate, just maybe at a lower rate. And his processor, I think, has shown that he has some sort of internal regulator as to when to make bigger time throws, and then it kind of reduces those turnover-worthy plays. So, Shedeur Sanders is my QB1. If you guys know anything about me, if you are new, then you probably don't know this, but my number 1 quarterback is at number 36 on my board. And that does adjust, actually. It factors in quarterback value. And I just don't think either of those quarterbacks, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, are scheme-proof, right? The guys who are 75+, those are the guys who I believe are scheme-proof. And, when you're in the right system, I always believe that you can jump up a full tier. And I think that, these organizations certainly could be able to justify that. But, it just seems like that's how the cards are stacking right now, quarterback at 2 and 3. And at number 4 for the New England Patriots, I think the wise move here is Tetairoa McMillan. But I will put this out there. I think that you guys are going to get T. Higgins. It says that you guys are the front runners early on. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, with T. Higgins and his big contested catch ability, you add that with Drake May's precision downfield, and I think it makes a match made in heaven. You can also say that for Tetairoa McMillan, especially with the fact that T-Mac builds up speed, and he is like a really, really good deep threat. You could just imagine Drake May taking a little bit of velocity off the ball, or maybe increasing the arc, and just allowing it to float out there as Tetairoa builds separation with that long speed and with those long arms. It absolutely could make sense. And a lot of people will talk about how you need to take tackle here. I will just say this. If you don't think Josh Simmons' health checks out, don't do it. Josh Simmons is the only player, in my opinion, on the offensive line that's worth a top 10 pick. Like, I love Will Campbell. He's at number 11 on my board. And so you can say like, yeah, maybe. But for Will Campbell, it is more so to be a guard than it is to be a tackle. And for the Patriots, maybe you can say like, yeah, we can like help. We can get some help on the offensive line at guard. You're not doing that at 4. So you need to take a true tackle if you're going to go offensive line here at 4. And the only true tackle I see is Josh Simmons, who I think could even be a guard, but I think he's going to be a real quality tackle, and then he could even be a better guard. So it's not necessarily to take down his potential as a tackle. It's more so me just saying, well, if he doesn't work at tackle, he sure as hell is going to be a great offensive guard. But that's the only player I'd consider on the offensive line. Don't force it, because that's how you get busts. When you end up forcing picks rather than going after some of the best players available, you end up shooting yourself in the foot. And do you want to be looking for another left tackle with your next first-round pick? No. So why waste it on this one? So I do think Tetairoa McMillan could be an option here. Javon Baker, you guys ended up giving me some insight. Feel free to confirm this. I haven't done enough research on it. But Javon Baker apparently has been running the wrong routes like during practice. So that's probably why he's not getting on the field, which, I mean, that is something that will get your ass pretty much put into special teams. But Jalen Polk certainly not there. I do think this would be, like, you can go embarrassment of riches. I think it's fair to go embarrassment of riches at the receiver position. If you can end up spending your, I think, $100 million on the offensive line, I think that could end up working out really, really well in your favor. At number 5 for the Carolina Panthers, there's a couple positions here that make a ton of sense for me. Mason Graham, Will Johnson especially, and Abdul Carter. Those are the holy trinity, so to speak. And I think you'd be in a great position with Abdul Carter. Like, don't get me wrong. I also think that Will Johnson is unbelievably special. And he's honestly had a relatively mediocre year because he's been dealing with an injury that he's been playing through and still playing very well through. Even with all that factored in, he still scored above a 90 grade, spoiler alert. But, I mean, I guess you guys can see it based off my color scheme. I think that he might be the best option. I always go edge rusher for the Panthers as well. And I mean, there are a lot of really good corners. Like, I could just wait and then end up sniping one there in round 2. But I will say there is a confidence drop off for me. Like, after Will Johnson, I start having some questions. You got my corners in here that I really like. Davison Igbinosun, he even got torched. He needs to be in a particular system that works, because Ohio State's defensive coordinator is an absolute dumbass, if you ask me, just based on how he uses his corners specifically. Does not know what he's doing. But you got guys like Jabbar Muhammad, that's going to be more scheme specific. You get to Trey Amos, Jamari Harris, and those guys, like, that's what you're looking at in round 2. Darian Porter as well. When you look at what you're going to get potentially at edge in round number 2, you can get Princely Umamielen, who's having a fantastic year. I mean, there's a plethora of guys who I might even take in the first, so you can get there in the second. LT Overton it's a stretch to see him go there, but he certainly could be there. JT Tuimoloau certainly could be. Micah Green, Donovan Ziruaku, Kyle Kennard. Like, it's a really good group in round 2. So I'm going to go after Will Johnson here, because I've gone edge for this team like a billion times, and being able to have an elite corner duo has almost more value than having a really good defensive line, solely because both work hand in hand, right? I prefer to be able to take a developmental edge rusher than take a developmental corner, especially when you are in big need of it. Go best player available. Can't go wrong with either one, but I've also gone Will Johnson I've gone Abdul Carter so many times for the Panthers. It's time to change it up a little bit. So let's get on with it. Let's go to number 6 for the Tennessee Titans. We have 2 full rounds here, but I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about these top guys here. At number 6, you can always talk about that right tackle spot, but again, I've already made my claim with the Patriots as to why I don't necessarily think that would be the best move. When it comes to the Titans specifically, people have brought up Ashton Genty, talked about how Derrick Henry was here, Chris Johnson, but those are previous regimes, right? This is the Brian Callahan regime. He never really valued running back to that degree, right? So I don't think that's going to be on the table, even though I think that could really help out Will Levis. I would not be against that if they do. But I do think the pass rush has taken a step down. And I think when you have the opportunity to get someone as talented as Abdul Carter at a position as valuable as Abdul Carter, and be able to get someone who is so young and so like new to the position, but yet so effective, I don't think you can say no. And, I think that it's a pretty clear choice for me at the moment. You could talk about wide receiver here, but I highly doubt that Luther Burden is going to change my mind to the degree where I end up selecting him at this spot. Because to me, Luther Burden's a really solid receiver, but I think he's being overrated. I think he's a little bit more role specific, even though I think for the Titans, it's a good system for him to be in. But at number 6 overall, I think that Brian Callahan could work with slightly lesser talent for a far better gain overall. And Abdul Carter's fantastic. I don't think anybody's going to complain about it. You could always talk about the quarterback position, but as much like I love Drew Allar is a clear QB3 for me, and he is really close to Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I just highly doubt that Drew Allar is going to be an early first round pick. I honestly think there's a stronger chance of him going back to school than there is of him being a top 10 pick. Therefore, I'm going to reserve my personal feelings and end up going after Abdul Carter. At number 7, we have the New York Jets, another team that you certainly could try to target Drew Allar for, because he's so young, so developmental, and he actually is doing much better. Like year over year, his growth has been ridiculous. He was QB 17 for me at the start of the year, a clear QB 3 for me now. But for the Jets specifically, corner, if Will Johnson's here, makes a ton of sense. Reed's going to be gone. Then you look at defensive interior. It's going to be a new regime coming in, so we can't even talk about the Joe Douglas era, undervaluing defensive interior. And, I really like what Kinlaw has done, but I also think that I actually just reevaluated Mason Graham today, and you get to see where he's at officially on my board. I really like the guy. I really do. And the thing is, the issue with Mason Graham, because people have him as high as 3, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I think it's a bit of a stretch. The thing about Mason Graham is that he's inconsistent. There are reps where he's legitimately unstoppable, and that's why I have him as high as I do. Like at 14, that is a very, very high grade. I think that consistency-wise, technically he's actually at number 11. 11 through 14 are all tied in terms of their score at a 77.25, if that's what you're wondering. So he is technically the 11th guy on my board. He's just only at 14 because he was lower than the other guys before I reshifted the board. So just keep that in mind. But for Mason Graham, his high-level wins are legitimately ludicrous. The problem is when he doesn't win, it's a bit concerning. So keep that in mind as to why maybe I look a little bit lower on Mason Graham than some other people. And the thing is, I'm not lower on him. What I ended up putting in my notes is that I don't think he's consistent enough to be the number 1 defensive interior out the gate. I think he needs to go to a team with a solidified defensive interior 1. And that is the Jets. And I think he will thrive here. The thing that my only pause is the fact that Leonard Taylor's on the squad. And I really like Leonard Taylor. But I don't think that an embarrassment of riches on the defensive interior, as we're looking at with the Rams, with how well that they've generated pressure, is something that I'm going to shy away from. So we're going to go after Mason Graham. I do think it's a position you could trade out of when we do have trades. Again, this is 2 rounds, no trades. But I think for the time being, Mason Graham is going to be a really solid selection. At number 8 for the Cleveland Browns, you guys know where I'm leaning right now. It's Ashton Jeanty. And I think that the other position to target for this team is you could talk about offensive tackle with Will Campbell. Jedrick Wills, you might be able to sign him for cheap. I mean, obviously he's having health issues right now, but DeJuan Jones as well is also having some health issues. But regardless of that, this team's identity has been through the run. Nick Chubb's up for a contract this year. Obviously has had a lengthy resume of injuries as well, but you guys know how much I love Nick Chubb. I used to have him pretty much as for me, the number 1 running back in the whole entire NFL before he got hurt last. So, I think that there's a lot of value that Jeanty could bring to this team where it does help out the offensive line. Because again, unless you're going Josh Simmons, I don't think an offensive lineman's worth it here because I have my legitimate questions on all of them. But Ashton Jeanty takes off pressure from the quarterback. He also takes off pressure from the offensive line when he ends up using his vision to not just be a manufactured runner. And with the way he's been playing, with his, by the way, I ended up actually factoring in running back value. I dropped his score by, I think, over 3 points. So if I did not factor in running back positional value, he would be number 2 on my board. He is that talented of a player. And technically, he could be even higher. It's just not very easy for running backs to score extremely highly for me. In the same way that for a cornerback, I value more so the production and the skill set over the pure athleticism and stuff that running backs inherently are more focused on. But Ashton Jeanty is the easiest way to take pressure off all the levels of your offense. And even for the defense, for that matter, when you get to have extended drives, it gives them more rest. So something I do want to also mention for Ashton Jeanty, because people are going to try to say there's no way a running back goes that high. I ended up saying this before, but when there is a history of data that suggests something and you continue to ignore it, it's no longer ignorance, it's arrogance, right? And when it comes to the running back position, you look at Saquon Barkley, number 2 overall. When you look at Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall, we have, I bought a Roomba, by the way. The Roomba is now just like patrolling my place. I don't know what the fuck's going on. But then Jahmyr Gibbs was hinted to almost go at number 6 overall. Number 6. Like, guys, if you're going to try to say Ashton Jeanty is not worth the top 10 pick, I hate to say it, but you're starting to have a little bit of a hive mind. And let's get out of it. Let's get out of it, because Ashton Jeanty is fantastic. I mean, he legitimately could go at number 4 to the Patriots. If they get T. Higgins, that could be their pick, right? If Brian Callahan wants to check his ego from what he's done in the past, he could go at number 6. Like, it legitimately could be that type of impact on an offense. So keep that in mind. Top-tier running backs really can make a difference, so long as the rest of the draft ends up falling in a way that would be beneficial to the team. And I think that for the Browns that are looking for a quarterback in this class, not really the class to do it, but you could end up sniping one in round 2. For wide receiver, it's a really good wide receiver class. Not maybe as good as last year's, but, there's a lot of good talent. And then for offensive tackle, this class sucks as it is. I think you're in the best position to go after Jeanty. At number 9 for the New Orleans Saints, you could go at Will Campbell here, but again, so many talented offensive linemen in this class that I just don't see the value the same way that I do an edge like Nick Scorton. Because Nick Scorton brings the size, he brings the production, he's done a fantastic job, and he's due for another reevaluation because I reevaluated him mid to early year, and he was having his respective struggles. Nick Scorton's turned it on. He has really done a good job. And so I think Nick Scorton is going to be the pick here, because you do need a contingency plan for what you're going to do with Cam Jordan. That is Nick Scorton. Your edge picks that you've taken in the past, where you tried to get cute with it, Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner, like, these guys are not necessarily going to be legitimate edge 2s, let alone edge 1s. So keep that in mind. You are probably looking for your successor at edge 1. And Cam Jordan, as he continues to slow down, should be transitioning to an edge 2. And that could be what Nick Scorton brings to the table. Now, people will try to say, like, hey, go James Pierce or something. I don't see through history of what the Saints have been drafting that James Pierce's body type is what they value. They like physicality. They like size. And it really is the physical nature of Nick Scorton that I think lines a lot closer with what you guys are going for. At number 10 for the Cincinnati Bengals, another team that you could be looking into this edge core for, and I wouldn't blame you for it, but I do want to take things a little bit of a different direction. Now, I do think you could even look to boost the offensive line because, best player available, Will Campbell could be a top-tier option. You can also talk about Kelvin Banks here. I would not shame you for wanting to do that. Josh Simmons as well. You guys know what I think about him. However, I think that when you look at the consistent poor performers on this Bengals defense, Geno Stone stands out like a sore thumb. And since Jesse Bates has been gone, you have not been able to fill that top tier safety position. And Malachi Starks is legitimately perfect for that. I would not be surprised to see you guys take Malachi Starks and Xavier Watson this draft, because they actually complement each other extremely, extremely well. Malachi Starks is unbelievably versatile, so he's going to be a Swiss Army knife for you early on. But as he continues to find his perfect role in this defense, I legitimately think he can have an almost Jesse Bates-esque effect, where it is daunting to throw past 15 yards because Malachi Starks is down there somewhere. And I think that carries a lot of value. And this is a good safety class, but not many guys have the Swiss Army nature that Malachi Starks does, to where I feel very comfortable with the idea of Malachi Starks being worth a top 10 pick for the Bengals, who have been, like, you signed Geno Stone to a 3-year deal. Malachi Starks is going to be what you're kind of hoping Geno Stone to be. It's okay to say that it was a bad move. I honestly thought it was a fine move when you guys made it, but Geno Stone just hasn't added up. So Malachi Starks, you already shown the need. Fill it with someone who actually makes sense. And at number 11, we got the Dallas Cowboys here. And, I mean, it's just the board doesn't fall well for the Cowboys. I mean, you guys won versus the Commanders. Like, what the hell are y'all doing? What are y'all doing, man? But regardless, defensive interior is super key. A lot of people are talking about Walter Nolan. I ended up mentioning at the start of this video that I have some pretty unique opinions about some of these defensive interiors, and I'm still getting to a lot of these guys. I've only graded a couple that have been updated up to this point, and I've watched, obviously, all of these guys on a week-by-week basis, but in terms of actual all-22, being able to dig in, my grades are solely all-22 because I think that integrity is super key. I don't want to be influenced by camera angles and stuff like that. So I like keeping it, pretty much as close to 1-to-1 as possible. And I will say Walter Nolan's one of those guys I have a lot less confidence in. I'll just put it out there. And it's someone who I was really hoping for more, but I didn't see it. But for the Cowboys, defense interior's there. Running back obviously is, but we don't have Ashton Genty on the board. And so I think the next best move is to get a legitimate wide receiver. And I don't know why people don't love Isaiah Bond the way they should. Also, where the hell's the dot on this thing? I think that I don't get that. But Isaiah Bond has been fantastic. Quinn Ewers' play has been up and down. And then, Isaiah pretty much thrived even with Arch Manning. I mean, look at the games he performed poorly in. It's the games where his quarterback sucked ass. Like, let's just be real here. He has game-breaking speed. He's someone who can play on the boundary, and he can play in the slot if need be, but he is a boundary receiver. Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, both of those guys are primary slots. And you might say they can play on the boundary if they want to, but you're using their resume as a slot receiver to justify where they're being taken. The rest is just pure projection. Isaiah Bond actually plays on the boundary. So it's someone who I thoroughly believe can be a legitimate threat. Legitimate threat. I mean, look at this. When you talk about like that split right there, that's a 75% on the boundary split. He brings the deep speed. Brandon Cooks should not be a primary option for this team going forward. I think he should be gone. So this is the right move. You guys sent a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. Don't know what the fuck was up with that. But as much as I love Jalen Tolbert, Ryan Flournoy, you need to get a top-end option. And this has no trades. So if you have to stick and pick, I'm going after the best player for the team available. At number 12 for the Chicago Bears, they need to go after somebody who is a quality offensive tackle who can also be a guard. And luckily, that's actually something this class has a lot of strength in, depending on what you target in round number 2. If you're saying, hey, we want Karan Amagaji to be the true tackle, so we want a guard, but like, hey, if Karan sucks, then we can end up trying to kick him to tackle, go Will Campbell. But my thought process, and I think you guys think this as well, let's get someone who is a known tackle, and if Karan is good, we can kick him to guard. If Karan is good, we can then move our tackle to guard. And that's exactly what Josh Simmons is. And I don't think this is going to be overly controversial. He was the best offensive tackle in the country before he got hurt. And the only reason some people aren't really taking him is because, well, he got hurt. And I think this team needs to go after the best player available. It's a massive position of need. And I don't think Josh Simmons' injury is going to hamper his ability in any way, shape, or form. At number 13 for the Indianapolis Colts, a lot of really good options here, but not really necessarily any for them. I will say Ben Morrison is returning in this. Otherwise, that would be my pick out the gate. I am thoroughly confident that Ben Morrison is returning to school. It's a true junior. I just don't get why he would come out. Like, hip injury, a really solid corner class. Like, next year's class, I don't really see the quantity of guys. So I will just say, I don't really think that... I don't think that we need to force him in this. And I think that's going to be good for pretty much everybody. I will be going the tight end route here. Just because I don't think Nick Eamon-Worry would go in the first round and the top 15 at least. And so I'm looking at the weapons available. And Colson Loveland is just so fantastic. He's literally an 88 receiving grade on an offense that's absolute ass cheeks in terms of actual like passing offense. And it's a clear top 2. And these guys are really good. We're seeing what happens when you get a reliable, young, athletic tight end. That's a mismatch when you see Brock Bowers. Do I think Colson Loveland is Brock Bowers? No. But I do think that his impact is going to be better than any other tight end outside of Brock Bowers in the last draft. And so, to me, we're going to rock it. Even though I say, hey, it's an embarrassment of riches, I'm not going to force another position at the moment. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't see the value at any other position outside of maybe edge, but I don't want to continue to be that guy who takes edge number 2 for the Colts at this spot. If you guys hear a little bit of rumbling, the freaking Roomba's like losing its mind over my stand-up desk. But at number 14, we got the Miami Dolphins. And, to me at this point, this is where you could really pull the trigger on Will Campbell, who's going to be a guard for you, but also has the ability to fill in a tackle if Patrick Paul can't work out. Kelvin Banks, though, I think that he'd be the better contingency plan because I have more faith in him as a tackle than Will Campbell, if that makes sense. So I'll go after the guy who I have more faith in as a tackle with Kelvin Banks and put him to guard if Patrick Paul can't work out. At number 15 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you guys, I hate to be boring, but it makes too much sense. You got Jalen Walker here, but I guess I'll just throw a little bit of curveball. My number 2 player in the class, James Pierce. It's going to be the same exact role with a very similar profile, even though Jalen Walker is 6'2", James Pierce 6'5". James Pierce is just a super stud. He's just an awesome player, but not many teams are looking for a player who's 243 pounds. This guy really is a difference maker, though. I think that he deserves to go higher, but not many teams appreciate guys who are under 250 pounds, maybe the way that I do. At 16 for the Los Angeles Rams, you're in a beautiful position to be able to snipe a top-tier offensive tackle in Ariante Urzuri here. And Urzuri has had his ups and downs, respectively, but he's actually done a really solid job overall. For somebody who, in my opinion, has actually improved noticeably as a pass blocker, he's faced a much tougher schedule in terms of like actual players he's going against this year, based on what I've seen. Of course, the games that you want to focus on, UNC, Michigan, Illinois, and then Penn State. Like, you might say, Illinois, why? I actually love Gabe Jacos. Like, he's somebody who, I know the Discord people will love this, but he was someone who we ended up spotting when we first saw Johnny Newton. So keep that in mind. But, this past week's done a good job. The Rams need to go after a true left tackle. That's the truth. They need to. They need to go after corner as well, but this class does have some good options for them round 3 that I think will be actually like perfectly reasonable for them to continue targeting. But for Ariante Urzuri, they need to go after a true left tackle, and as much as I want to go Will Campbell, I need to guarantee that they're going to be a tackle. You have 2 guards that are paid. Not really much room for him to schmooze his way on in. So Ariante Urzuri is going to be the choice. And number 17 for the San Francisco 49ers, I think this one's pretty simple to me. You're going after the best player available. That's going to be Will Campbell. You could go after a corner 3, or you can go after a legitimate starting offensive lineman. I think he's going to be an upgrade over McKivitz, so you could actually even start him at tackle, even though I have my concerns for him. But he is the best player available, and you do have the capability of putting him at guard if you want to. I'm not a big Banks guy, so, you can have Pooney and Campbell as your starting guards, and I think you're going to be in a great position. At 18 for the Cardinals, I'm going to look at Jalen Walker pretty heavily here. I know the defensive interior value is good, but I'm not a big Walter Nolan guy. After watching him more and more, I watch him on the TV, and I'm like, man, this guy's fantastic. But when you actually dig in, I'm going to just say it felt like more of a product of poor offense than a product of really good edge play, or defensive interior play, So I'm going to go after the best player available. That's Jalen Walker. I think his flexibility is going to be awesome. Gan's going to love it. So Jalen Walker is going to be the pick. At number 19 for the Atlanta Falcons, it's a clear pick for edge for me. I know people even talked about going after multiple edges. You're in a good spot, though, because it doesn't really matter which one you take. You're going to be doing a good job regardless. And I'll go after the homegrown guy, Mikael Williams. Let's get on to the second round where it might get a little more interesting for y'all. At number 20 for the Seattle Seahawks, offensive tackle is the key position here. I think Cam Williams is going to return. So for this video, I'll end up putting it in the description as well. Cam Williams, I think, man, I'll consider him coming out. I will. Just because, first off, I didn't announce at the start of the video. Everybody knows that I always have Ben Morrison out if they're vets. So I don't really have to explain that too much. If Cam Williams is getting first-round hype, I don't know if he decides to go back just to get a higher first-round pick value. So I'll say let's go after Cam Williams. Let's do it. You need a right tackle for the future, but the thing is, I know I already hear the comments coming in saying, oh, Abe Lucas is good. We don't need to replace Abe Lucas. Cam Williams can play guard in the short run, and I think he should. So honestly, this is going to be a two-parter right here. First off, Cam Williams is now going to be in an offense where he doesn't have to play right tackle right away. And I hope to God he only stays as a guard. I hope this is just a guard pick, like, for you guys. But remember when I ended up talking about with Ashton Genty, when you see a bunch of historical data and a trend that is very clear and you ignore it, it's no longer ignorance, it's arrogance. No one's saying Abe Lucas sucks. Nobody. I mean, that's why he was a second-round pick. We all really liked him. But when you end up seeing his track record of health, the best ability is availability. And I think it really does matter that we at least have a contingency plan for when that happens, because it's pretty obvious that it could. It very well could. So Cam Williams provides a short-term guard replacement with physicality, length, and a lot of room for growth, and a contingency plan for right tackle, because unfortunately, you need to have one. You do. At number 21 for the Washington Commanders, edge is the easy position for me. You can also go after another corner position because a lot of good corners are on the board. Again, Ben Morrison going to be returning in this one. But this is also a really good corner class, so I don't necessarily feel the need for being able to go after corner this early. I prefer to go after a top-tier edge rusher. And you got LT Overton here. You got JT Tuimoloau. I love JT Tuimoloau. You guys know that. Pretty much top quartile in both run stop rate and pass rush win rate. Like, what, 0.1% off of both. So, you know, in that 75th percentile, LT Overton technically is pretty much in the top 100 percentile for pass rush win rate, and then top quartile for run stop. But I honestly think LT should return to school. But LT is such a beast that I'm fine taking him here. I really do. I think you need to go after a legitimate edge one. It was my big concern with the Commanders is the fact that I didn't trust their actual edges, and they've done a much better job. I will admit, they've done a much better job this year than what I've expected, and I think what anybody expected. But imagine that type of elevated production with an actual top-end talent. And number 22 for the Texans. This is an easy one for me. I mean, I know interior offensive line is something you guys want to fix, but with Kenneth Grant here, I mean, top-tier motor, by the way. This dude hauls ass 24/7. And he's just gotten better and better this year. Like, I really do love the fact that he's had a positive progression. And again, you're talking about a unique frame with unique athleticism, with a defensive coach, with a high-level motor. To me, he's worth damn near as much as Mason Graham. Solely because the fact that this guy has such a damn good motor and such a unique frame that I'm willing to say, hey, if you suck for 2 years because you're still putting it together at the NFL level, I still have faith in you to put it together by year 3 and year 4, to where I would be pretty damn disappointed. Like, I would almost bet more money on Kenneth Grant getting a second contract than Mason Graham. And that's, you guys know how much I love Mason Graham. He's my highest defensive interior by a good margin at the moment, just because I know Kenneth Grant is just unbelievably high motor. Like, he is a leader. He's built to be a leader. And so I'm a big fan of that. I think he could be a great addition there for the Texans. And number 23 for the Denver Broncos, this one is all day. I don't give a shit who's on the board. Tyler Warren is built to be a Sean Payton tight end. Former quarterback, so you already know this. I'm forgetting the damn dude's name. Taysom Hill. I was about to say Peyton Hill. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's an actress. But Taysom Hill connection. But pretty much Tyler Warren's better in all aspects, and he's actually built to play every down in football. Even though Taysom ended up just absolutely eviscerating, like the Browns, if I'm not mistaken? I don't know. But he ended up having a crazy game a couple weeks ago. But Tyler Warren is just so damn dynamic. And this team needs a tight end. They're trying to get rid of Greg Dulcich. Like, he is legitimately built to play tight end for Sean Payton. So if this doesn't happen, I'm going to be extremely disappointed if he's there and they pass on him. I'll be slightly disappointed because I wanted to see how Peyton would use him if he goes earlier, but I also am not going to blame any team for taking him earlier than this. I've not reevaluated the tight end class because I'm still waiting on more so Notre Dame offensive tape and some Clemson offensive tape to be able to reevaluate a couple of the guys that I really want to get locked down. But regardless, obviously I've been seeing these guys on a weekly basis, been studying quarterbacks as well, and so I've been able to tell that Tyler Warren's an absolute stud. But at 24 for the Chargers, we ended up sniping both of their dream picks, which would have been Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren, in my opinion. I think that they're at the point where it looks like Quentin Johnston, once again, is regressing back to the mean. And that sucks. It does suck. So I am looking for someone who can play on the boundary. The problem is I don't see any of that here. I don't think that you need to force a wide receiver pick here. This is actually a good spot for T. Higgins if you're thinking about it. if you can afford it, put T. Higgins on this squad. And, technically the Patriots would then go after T-Mac and kind of win-win for both parties. But regardless, for the Chargers, they don't only need tight end and they don't need exactly just tight end and wide receiver, right? They could be able to target a multitude of positions, including defensive interior, because you got Walter Nolan here, and I think that's certainly worth considering. But I just love the idea of Deone Walker on the squad. He's done so much better than what he did like last year. And I appreciate that about him because, I mean, his top-end reps last year were just jaw-dropping. The consistency was so terrible. This year, he had a very slow start, but I've seen him pick it up. And I hope to God that it's not going to be another Walter Nolan situation where it's like, oh, wow, you're actually doing so much better, and then it ends up just being, relatively mediocre. So fingers crossed on that. But this is literally Kenneth Grant, just, a couple inches taller, right? 6'6", 340 pounds. He's just a unique beast, but it is someone who can fit perfectly into the defensive system. And he's somebody that is extremely freaky and has like ridiculous instant win potential that you might want to roll the dice on that. So I'm going to elect 2 at this spot. At 25 for the Baltimore Ravens, it's line or corner. I feel like the PFF actually got that right for once. Like, woot woot. Wide receiver, yes, I do think you could look at an Emeka Egbuka here. At the same time, I mean, shit, how many fucking first-round picks you going to throw at this guy? I mean, Lamar doesn't need to be carried, so to speak, because he's doing such a phenomenal job, especially even though, I mean, you guys have gone best player available at wide receiver a lot. I mean, Zay Flowers for the most part, even though I wasn't fully sold on Zay, but he's been a very, very good player. I mean, to be fair, the one guy who made me less confident about Zay Flowers was Nate Wiggins. Funnily enough, because that was the matchup where I'm like, damn. But it ended up both of them being Ravens first round picks, so I guess they really liked that matchup and ended up wanting it never to happen again, but pretty much be on their own practice field every single day. I think that, speaking of Nate Wiggins, though, corner is a good position to look at. Like, Trey Amos is such a stud. Darian Porter is a really good player as well. But the guy who I'm going to go after here is Luther Burden. And you might say, like, what the hell, dude? You're still limiting the height and stuff. They ended up trading for Deontay Johnson. And to me, Luther Burden is very similar to Deontay Johnson's role in the NFL. So you've already shown a need by being able to trade for it. And you got really good value. Maybe don't play the, I'm going to get the guy who I think is, we can snipe something down the board. Opportunity cost has its own weight as well. But there's a certain point where everyone's saying, hey, let's get wide receiver, and you have arguably the best player available as a wide receiver who is a perfect role for someone you just brought onto your team and who will be leaving. It makes sense. You're not going to be wrong for going corner, but I don't think you can shame them for going after wide receiver. Now, for the Steelers, speaking of another team that needs wide receiver, I've already made a billion rants about Emeka Egbuka to this team and why I don't think it's a good move. I ended up, I'm trying to remember exactly what video, but it was like last week. I ended up having a whole soliloquy about why I think Emeka Egbuka is not built to be a Pittsburgh Steeler unless, in the first round, in the end of the first round. If you want to trade back and take him, I'm happy with that. But the bottom line is, he's a slot receiver for the past 2 years, has never been the best receiver on his team, and that doesn't mean anything because technically you could talk about Justin Jefferson wasn't better than Jamar Chase on LSU. You could talk about stuff like that, but I don't think that Emeka is on that tier. Let's make it very clear about that. But Emeka, I think, should be, he needs to be a boundary. The only reason we were trying to get a slot receiver, like Christian Kirk, was to be able to replace the role of Roman Wilson for this year. Roman Wilson's going to be back. You just spent a third-round pick on him. He just hasn't been healthy. Get him healthy and see what's up. You're essentially having multiple slot receivers, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Emeka Egbuka, or you're forcing Emeka to go to a position he hasn't played in 2 years and then hoping that he's worth a first-round pick. It's just a roll of the dice I don't want to do. So as much as I love Emeka on the squad, not at 26. And we won't have the opportunity at 58. If we do, then there's something up. It pisses everyone off. And I understand. But this is also a mock draft that I'll put my personal spin on. And based on watching how the NFL has evaluated guys who have big arms, good personalities, good growth curves, Drew Allar is built to be an end of the first quarterback. I mean, you could talk about this Ohio State game, but I made a quarterback video where I actually broke down my exact scouting report for that game specifically. His worst game, might I add. And I still came away feeling very, very confident in Drew Allar. And his processor is really solid. Probably the second best in the whole class. His arm is the best in the whole class. And his precision year over year is unreal in terms of its progression. I literally said 2 years ago, this guy can't hit a moving target. Coming into this year, he could barely hit a moving target. And all of a sudden, because he continues to work on his mechanics, there's a whole video on this online. He continues working year over year on his throwing mechanics. He has gotten to the point where he's legitimately getting close to a pinpoint passer. And I'm willing to bet on that. He's built to be an AFC North quarterback. I think if the Steelers pass on him, I don't know if the Browns could say no. I think that you are almost gifting the Browns Drew Allar at this point, based on the quarterbacks that are taken. You're pretty much gifting them him, or you can say, hey, we can give him Jalen Milroe. And with Jalen Milroe's deficiencies as a passer, I'm more willing to let Drew Allar not slip to a division rival and roll the dice, even though everyone's going to say no. We also don't even have a quarterback next year yet. Probably get one of them to return. But Drew Allar would then be in a good position to sit and develop even more. So Drew Allar is someone who I think actually should be QB1 of this class because of the growth curve. He's 20 years old, for Christ's sakes. I think he turns 21 in April. He legitimately will be a fresh 21 at the draft. I don't think people have good enough arguments to say that he's not worth it, because I've looked at the offense. I've watched damn near every game of Drew Allar this year in all 22 because I continue trying to disprove myself, because I had him as QB 17 at the start of the year. I'm the last guy you could say is biased for Drew Allar. And everything he does is just so much better than it was the year before. And that year was so much better than the year before that I am willing to say, I'm going to roll the dice on this guy. I think he's worth it. At number 26 for the Green Bay Packers, you guys love this pick. And again, we have Ben Morrison returning in this. But Jeff Hafley is he's all about physicality, man coverage, and press. That's Azariah Thomas to a T. And I don't know why PFF hasn't gotten, I don't know why Trev thinks of him as a late day 2 guy. I personally can't wrap my head around how Maxwell Hairston is above him, and Zy Alexander especially. But, I mean, again, it is what it is. I think Azariah Thomas is legitimately built for Jeff Hafley's defense. He is perfect. 6'2", 198. Talk about almost a perfect frame as well. And he's going to be running in the 4.3s. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the 4.2s. No one beats this guy over the top. And so when you've seen him develop year over year, even in a year he never started, except for the bowl game, he had 500 reps. So this dude has a lot of reps under his belt, and you've seen him take steps up every single game damn near. And I've seen him in person too. So it's he passed the eye test in person, and he also passes it on tape. I think it's fantastic. I think he's one of the most underrated players I've ever seen, because if you just ended up saying, hey, there's a corner that is really sticky in man coverage, he's extremely physical, no one can beat him with their athleticism, and he's a one-year starter that has just propelled himself into a lot of people's top conversations, you'd be surprised to hear that he'd be considered a late day 2 guy. You'd be like, oh, is that a top 10 pick? He's from Florida State, so it's a top-end corner school, so it's well, why is he not? That's a question I think we'll have answered come draft time, as the, actually, he is going to be a first-round pick. So, I'm going to plant my flag there. You guys know me. I have a couple, I'll stand on business for, Drew Allar or Azariah Thomas. I will die on a hill for my takes, but it's because I think that I try to challenge my takes so much that, you know what? As much shit as I throw at it, if it still stands, I'm going to stand on it. It is what it is. And number 28 for the Minnesota Vikings, dream goal, trade back. But when you can end up getting top-tier offensive line help here with Wyatt Milam, kind of hard to say no. He's a really, really good offensive tackle. Really good offensive tackle. But he has too short of arms, so he's going to be playing guard. And when you can get someone who is proficient as a tackle, as a guard role, and he actually does look like he could easily play guard and play it well, it's kind of hard to say no to that. You also could look at that corner spot. Trey Amos, I mean, his top-end speed is awesome. His explosiveness, questionable. But I mean, this dude's an absolute savage. And I will say he's a top end corner. And maybe in the third round, I still think you can get a really legitimately solid guard. I usually go guard for you guys, but I'm going to go after Trey Amos in this equation. I mean, he's 6'1", 190, but plays 210. Like, he feels 210. And, you know, he's just always at the catch point. Very physical. I think Brian Flores will love him. At 29 for the Philadelphia Eagles, another easy decision for me to make. With the edge rushers that are still on the board, JT Tuimoloau makes too much sense. BG breaks my heart that he's pretty much donezo. But it feels like you guys might be getting close to signing Milton Williams. We'll see about that. But this is a Josh Sweat replacement right here for the long run. JT Tuimoloau is just like one of my favorite players in the class. And you guys know me. He was my least favorite player, essentially, compared to consensus up to this year. And I honestly think it's a disservice how like people have just basically given JT the middle finger. And I'm not saying this to Trev because 49 is reasonable. But, you know, it's just he's somebody who's built so well, 270 pounds. He's a good athlete. He even can chase down run plays from behind. I have a clip of that on X. In his biggest challenge game, which was Oregon, he performed arguably his best. And I think that is phenomenal. I mean, the fact that this guy ends up taking over a game versus elite offensive tackle play and really good offensive interior play, and being able to just be that successful, I think that is awesome. And I don't think it's getting rewarded enough. At number 30 for the Buffalo Bills, edge rusher also is on the mind. But I think for realism's sake, you need to go after Walter Nolan at this point. Like, just because I know that the potential is there for him to be awesome. Like, it's clear. He is a freak athlete who is extremely flexible. I think that if you pass on him here, you're giving him to the Chiefs. And this team could use an upgraded defensive interior. And it also would be very happy to flip off the Chiefs and take a dream pick for them right in front of them. At number 31, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, speaking of. And, you know, there's a lot of good options here. And I think that Emeka Egbuka would be the one who I think would be the best choice. Now, I think that you could look at corner here as well. Because you got Siobhan Revell, who is pretty much considered a almost consensus first-round pick. I wasn't there with him. And technically, well, I don't even think technically he's there for Trev either. But, you know, 6'3", 193 if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And his ball skills are awesome. I mean, hell, in 2.5 games, he ended up having 3 forced incompletions, right? And one of those apparently would have been an interception. I obviously don't have access to all 22 tape. Oh, hello. What the hell is this? I actually do have college premium stats, buddy, but I don't have ODU, Appalachian State, or whatever the hell that team is for all 22. Like, I ended up having him in my top 41 corner video, being the one corner at 42 that I didn't study for this year's tape. But he was and would have ended up being, I think, corner 15 or 16 for me, which is still very good. Like, very good. And so for that, I think that everything wrapped up in a little bow. I think Siobhan Revell makes a lot of sense for a team that is looking for that potential corner upgrade. I haven't taken Siobhan Revell for this team, and so it's cool to be able to roll the dice on him. At 32 for the Lions, it's a crystal ball, man. It's so obvious they're going to go after edge. And, I mean, looking at the best options available, I'm such a sucker for Kamen Rucker, but, I mean, Princely Umamielen, Shamar Stewart, those are the guys who I think are going to be the more likely options. Like, Princely Umamielen's just having a fantastic year, so I think that's more logical to take him. But I do want to say I have a little bit of a lower opinion on Princely Umamielen than 32 overall. Where's he at on my board? Donde está Princely Umamielen? Number 78 on my board. Which, again, I have some guys that I need to drop, so he'll be top 64. But Princely, I do think the numbers are slightly more deceiving, but he's still a very good player. And at this point, a lot of teams are starting to reach into their second and third round quality players that can make a big impact. I think Princely would be great for that. At number 33 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we ended up going after Travis Hunter in the first, which I ended up actually posing somebody ended up posing a really good counter to the idea that Travis Hunter is just known for being good on both sides of the ball and not necessarily great on either side of the ball in terms of being the best, right? And I ended up going to that, so feel free to check that part out. But I honestly thought it was a really good counter, basically saying, hey, what happens if he can actually focus all of his attention on one? He's already so good at both. I think he could be even better at one, which, again, that's literally the best possible explanation I've ever seen. Like, really kudos to you for bringing that up. So, good on you for that. I will say that at this point, you guys know me. I like going after offensive tackle for this team. Like, offensive lineman, super key. And I think that Jack Nelson could actually accelerate into the first round. Like, he easily could. I mean, look at this. 8 pressures on the year, one of them being a sack. Like, that is something that's worth noting. This guy's gone up against the best of the best. And, I mean, technically he did struggle versus Penn State, but, you know, struggle, air quotes. I mean, we're talking about 8 pressures on the year where, I mean, somebody who is still developing as well, the Arianti Ursary, that is getting unlimited hype, has allowed 13. So, again, just keep that in mind, and no, pressures aren't everything. I wasn't a big fan of Patrick Paul, and he ended up having, like, no pressures on the year. Jack Nelson's going to be my guy, though. I mean, I hate to be bland and boring, but, you know, he is worth much higher than what people even remotely suggest. Jack Nelson's an awesome offensive tackle, and even with me dropping him at the start of the year, he still is 58. And again, we have guys above him that will be falling, so he will be a top 50 player with me grading him earlier in the year on worse performances when he had a little bit of a sluggish start. This team needs a left tackle. This guy is built to be a left tackle. Kind of my dream pick for the Patriots, but we ended up kind of sniping him in this one. At 34 for the Giants, ended up getting our quarterback in Cam Ward in round number 1. I think technically you could look at an offensive tackle here in round 2, but I also just took the one tackle that I'd prefer over every single other one. So corner makes a lot of sense here. Looking at other positions you could go after as well. I mean, you could look at the wide receiver position with Emeka Egbuka. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but again, you're going to be pretty much forcing him to go to the boundary. I think just the best option's corner, and there's a lot of good ones. And I know you guys like foot speed, you guys like height, you guys like size. That's Darian Porter here, 6'4", 200 pounds. It's just it's his first year as a corner, like legitimately. He has 4 or 5 starts at corner. And this dude's just an absolute savage. I mean, just really, really well built. And I think he's 34 overall on my board. 35, because I ended up boosting. I mean, again, I have multiple guys above him who will be falling. So he'll be a top 32 guy. But Darian Porter, going to be my choice there. I mean, fantastic corner. Easily could see him going above Siobhan Ravel. Maybe should, but, you know, if you're really that butthurt about it, Chiefs fans, I'm perfectly happy switching it as well. Then we have the Las Vegas Raiders at 35. Took Shedeur Sanders in the first round. I do know that offensive line at this point would make a lot of sense. You get Wyatt Milam, who's going to help out in the offensive interior. I don't think that's the biggest area of growth for the team. By the way, if you guys own Roombas, how many fucking times do they go over the same spot? I mean, like, this dude is straight up doing a dance around my feet. Like, I swear I feel like I'm on, like, a stripper pole. This thing's just, like, going around and around. I'm like, pause, bro. Like, at least give me some cash if you're going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, we know we could use it. And you know how you can give it to me for free? Using that UnderDog code, which is the top link in my link tree. But, anywho, also this team needs a wide receiver 1, man. I mean, how long can you just solely rely on Brock Bowers? When you have Emeka Egbuka here, it makes a lot of sense. To me, it makes a lot of sense. Now, it's like, you're at that point. Remember, I said for the Steelers, late first, not comfortable trying to push him to the boundary if I need to. In the early second, I already got my difference maker, right, in the first round. Emeka then makes a lot of sense. So, it's worth at least seeing what he can do. And he might end up being a good slot guy. But at the end of the day, I think, I have ticklish toes, and that thing just brushed my feet. Woo! My goodness. But Emeka Egbuka could be an absolute star. At number 36 for the Patriots, again, I've talked about this with the number 4 pick. Use all your money in free agency to get someone like Garrett Bowles. Like, please, just give him that type of contract, like a 3-year, 75. Like, give him 25 a year. Like, don't be cheap about it, because getting a quality veteran tackle is going to help you out so much more than this rookie shit. Like, these guys need to develop. You can't say, like, Leighton Robinson, or not Leighton Robinson. Well, technically Leighton Robinson is a good example of someone who you need to be more patient with, but Caden Wallace is the perfect example of a right tackle that you took to be your left tackle, and then he's struggling. Well, because I honestly thought he should be a better guard. He was a developmental tackle for me, a fringe starting guard, and I thought it was actually a good move for the Patriots to put him at guard and Owenu at right tackle, and, well, it hasn't worked out. And it's not because Caden Wallace sucks. It's because you need to give him time. And so with the Patriots already going after a weapon in Tetairoa McMillan, and because I need to value running back more, I see that there's a massive, massive threat to losing out on someone that you really have a chance of falling in love with, the Amarian Hampton, who has experience with Drake May. That's probably the reason why I'm really focusing on Amarian right here. And he'll also keep the tread on the tires for Ramondre Stevenson. And then you have Antonio Gibson in there as the scat back, right? So I really think that it could be totally worth it to be able to go after Amarian Hampton here. And again, spend your money. You have a lot of money in free agency. Spend on offensive line, please. Just do that. Stop trying to fill a need with, just don't fill a need with a draft pick if you haven't been able to with your previous draft picks. You filled your running back vacancy with Ramondre Stevenson well. Why not continue that role, right? And let Ramondre Stevenson and Amarian cook together. And also you give Drake May even more comfortability in an offense with a player he knows. And now you could potentially have T. Higgins, Amarian Hampton, as well as Tetairoa McMillan added to an offense that already has some really solid foundational pieces. And spend money on the offensive line, snipe an edge rusher, even potentially pay one. You get like Josh Sweat for a year, right? Like talking about him potentially leaving the Eagles. That's how you can pivot and use your picks to put your team in position to be the best it can be. And at number 37 with the Chicago Bears, we ended up taking offensive lineman in the first round with Josh Simmons. I know it's going to irritate a lot of people, but Josh Simmons is to me the number one offensive lineman in the class. He's also one of the few true tackles in the class that can end up kicking the guard though, but someone who I truly believe works as an offensive tackle. So here at number 37, I think that the best option would be going after a defensive interior here in Tyleik Williams. Now, we could try to roll the dice and see if he'd be there at 44, but I think that going after another offensive lineman potentially, we don't really need to force that, right? Like we don't need to go after that. I think that the prime opportunity here is to go after an extremely high floor defensive interior in Tyleik Williams that would complement the pass rushing ability of Gervin Dexter and give us a real quality defensive interior for the next 4 years. So we're going to go after Tyleik Williams there at number 37. And number 38 for the Tennessee Titans ended up going after Abdul Carter in the first round. I think that's awesome. At this point, we can look at wide receiver. You got Trey Harris on the board. Can't really go wrong with him. Jalen Royals is awesome. I think that he'd work really well in a Brian Callahan offense. Ricky White as well. Did they finally move up Tide? They moved him up there. Okay, excuse. But Jaden Higgins as well. It's actually kind of disrespectful to have Jalen Noel above Jaden Higgins, but I mean, we all have our types. I think that's fair. We all kind of have our types. And so it looks like Jaden Higgins isn't really his type, like Trevor Sikkema's, because this is Trevor's board. But, I mean, with us getting Abdul Carter in the first, I think it's smart to go offense in the second. Offensive tackle's a little bit weak at the moment. And, technically you can go after a quarterback with Jalen Milroe. We kind of saw what happened last time, though, that you guys ended up trying to go after a quarterback that is still developing as a passer, but had a primary leg attribute. I think Jaden Higgins should go above Trey Harris. And technically the yards per route run is like literally half of Trey Harris's, but at the same time as well, I think Jaden Higgins is just far more of an NFL receiver at the moment, completely, than we can talk about Trey Harris. So I don't think you can go wrong. I really do like Trey Harris. I think he's a very, very solid wide receiver, but I personally value Jaden Higgins even more. And the fact is he is better drop rate, contested catch rate, etc. And I think that is extremely valuable at a 6'4", 215-pound frame than what you can get elsewhere. At number 39 for the New York Jets, this is now an opportunity for Jalen Milroe to step in. We ended up taking Mason Graham in the first, and I do think that this is the opportunity for us to go after Milroe and develop him for the Jets. At the same time, if Aaron Rodgers still has his way, he probably won't want to choose a successor. Now, we could look at tight end here with Harold Fannin. I don't know why he's being so underrated outside of the fact he's 230, but I mean, 230 is not a death sentence in the NFL. I don't know why it's like that. Ben Morrison is considered returning in this again. I do think corner certainly makes a lot of sense here. And the player who I would actually recommend for this team is not Davison Igbinosun, because I think Igbinosun needs to be in a little bit more of a press man system than anything. And I think the Jets, I don't know what their system's going to be, but Davison is a little bit more scheme specific than what I think I would like to admit. And I'm betting on him going to a scheme specific route. And it's kind of weird that he didn't get graded here because he's actually been really solid this year. But I'm actually going to use a placeholder, and it's for Jamari Harris. So you guys know me. Who's going to be the poor sucker who gets put in here? Fentrell Cypress. You guys know it's my first guy to ever take for a placeholder. It is not going to be the pick. It's my number 30 overall player in Jamari Harris. He has a ton of big potential. I think that being an understudy there to Sauce Gardner really has the potential to make an elite corner duo. So I'm going to be going that route because I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to say, dude, I need my defense to be reliable. The offensive weapons aren't necessarily there. And so we're going to go after the best player available, which I think is Jamari Harris for this team. At number 40 for the Cleveland Browns, ended up going after Ashton Genty in round number 1. We will go Jalen Milroe here because this is the perfect opportunity for him to sit and develop. I think he should go back to school, but I just don't know if he will. I honestly think the whole Bama team should go back to Monty Jackson, LT Overton, Jalen Milroe, even the guards for that matter, and Jaden Roberts as well as Tyler Booker. I don't really see much of a benefit of them coming out this year when if they could use that extra year of eligibility, they can end up being even better picks and even better players. At 41 for the New Orleans Saints, we ended up going edge in round number 1. It's kind of sad to see Wyatt Milam here, and I think I might have to take him. He's been such a fantastic offensive lineman. This guy could be a real quality interior. Again, I would just also say that you could wait. You could, but it's also a good spot for you to go after Milam because he is going to legitimately start on your squad. He's going to have that tackle flexibility. I do think you could be in the market to go after a high-range safety like Nick Eamon-Wari here to be able to develop him for a year. Not out of the question. After you got rid of Marshawn Lattimore, you could look for even another corner, but again, don't really think that's going to happen. So I think I will go after the best player available, and that's Wyatt Milam, who will start at guard for you, can also moonlight at tackle if need be. And you're just getting yourself a high-quality player. So 2 real quality players there in Milam as well as Scorton. And I think that's a good way to end off the draft for the Saints. For the Bengals at 42, we ended up going after Malachi Starks in round number 1. Here in round number 2, I think we still have great opportunities at a multitude of positions. You look at Kyle Kennard here, you look at Micah Green, and you can also look at Kamen Rucker. Rucker's a little bit more of their taste. 6'2", 265, can play with his hand in the dirt as well, but Shamar Stewart's too good to pass on. Like 290, he can shut down to 280 and then be a perfect Bengals edge. Ridiculous athlete as well, so I'm not going to pass him up here. At number 43 for the Dallas Cowboys, you guys know where I like to rock. I went receiver in the first. I'm going defensive interior here in the second. I don't know why Derek Harmon's getting shit on right now. Like, it just doesn't make much sense. He's done a very solid job this year. But, Omar Norman-Lott's someone that a lot of people love. The problem is, look at how many snaps he's had this year. 191? I mean, he's going to be going to the Senior Bowl, so we're going to see him versus top-end talent. But it's like, again, when you're talking about Derek Harmon, who's played a lot of snaps, like 3 years worth of over 450 snaps, which it will be because he's 446 right now, but it just doesn't make very much sense because he's been proven productive over multiple years. And to replace Osa Digizua and be even more dominant on that line when they're all healthy, I think that matters a lot. At number 44 for the Chicago Bears, you got Eli Omaner here. That'd be very intriguing, but you kind of want to have someone more in the slot than anything. I would say actually a dark horse pick here is Jalen Royals, but let's see. I honestly might just say go Tyler Booker, but I also, you guys know me for the storyline. Since you just got Josh Simmons, getting Donovan Jackson. Actually, I didn't even realize that. If we do that, we actually go full off Ohio State line when you got Donovan Jackson, Josh Simmons, and Tyleik Williams. Fuck it, let's do it. I mean, like, why not? This team definitely needs far more than just one guard or one tackle. Like, they need a multitude of options, and Donovan Jackson can moonlight a tackle too. So right now you're arming yourself with chemistry, which is super key, especially early on in rookies' careers, like either mentorship or chemistry. And so now you got a proven left tackle, left guard duo that was very, very, very skilled, very elite. And then now you also have Kron Amagaji, who is super flexible and can go pretty much anywhere. And then you also have a defensive interior now that has Gervin Dexter as a high-end pass rusher, and then Tyleik Williams, who's the high-end run defender. So good balance everywhere. That's just how you maximize player value with like being able to get proper, like the best player available. Like, you're going to be able to massively influence how your team's performing the next year. At 45 for the Indianapolis Colts, I mean, I think Nick Emmanwori just makes too much sense. It's so boring. I know. I'm a man of habit, but there's just a certain point where the dream fit and the value for the Colts just line up perfectly. And it sucks, but that's just what I feel comfortable doing. Like, it's just perfect value. 6'3", 227. Interception machine, by the way. Like, pick machine. He has 4 of them, but he also has multiple pick sixes. This dude's an absolute savage. I mean, I love Nick Emmanwori. So at number 46, though, for the Dolphins, we ended up going in the first round with Kelvin Banks, And this is a perfect reasoning why you might not want to go after Kelvin Banks in the first, is because you can get Ratledge or Booker here. But, I mean, again, you're taking a risk because both of those guys could have been gone, right? So with that all being said and done, I don't think that wide receiver's out of the realm of possibility here. Like, I'm just going to be honest. You could be losing Tyreek Hill in the near future. Not like maybe this year, maybe not even next, but there is a need for a wide receiver on this team, in my opinion. But there's also a need for defensive interior. And looking at the options that are presenting itself, it sucks that Aeneas Peoples ended up sucking this past week. 47 defensive grade. Don't know what the hell happened there. But that's where you can start considering guys like Omar Norman Lott, where they might be low reps, but people are literally saying they're top 30 talents just with not a lot of experience. And you could also go for TJ Sanders, but TJ's at that 290 mark. If I'm not mistaken, Omar's a little bit larger. Yeah, 315. Like, he's a prototypical defensive interior. Alfred Collins has been having himself a great year. Like, a really good year. And actually, with the experience Alfred Collins has as well, I actually think that might be even more valuable. 320 pounds. I think it just makes a ton of sense. Let's go Alfred Collins there for the Dolphins. Fix the offensive and defensive line. Look at that. For the Bears, we went Ohio State. For the Dolphins, we went Texas. Pick number 47 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Went after edge in the first with our star edge rusher, James Pierce. And at this point, I think that the Buccaneers could be looking at successor at receiver. Alek Iomaner would not be a bad choice because it is kind of like best player available. You could look potentially at the running back room, but this class is a lot of guys. It really does. I don't think that's much of a position to target necessarily. But I think linebacker, you guys have talked about this so much. I mean, Jihad Campbell makes a lot of sense here. You went after a Bama defensive lineman in the second round last year. You can end up getting his teammate here in Jihad Campbell here in the second. So got yourself a quality edge rusher and a quality linebacker. I think those are the two positions that need to be hit early on for the Buccaneers for the best value. They actually got my linebacker and edge one pretty much because I haven't graded Jihad Campbell, but based on pretty much everything I've seen, like outside of Jack Kaiser, probably going to be like the clear dog at 1. At number 48 for the Carolina Panthers, I mean, you guys, like Bryce ended up having a career game, which is incredible. You guys almost beat the Chiefs, and of course the Chiefs are like the biggest posers with their record that we've seen since probably last year with the Eagles. But regardless, I think that you guys are actually in a good spot. Drafting Will Johnson in the first, here in the second. I mean, look at the value that's here. I don't think that you went wrong by going after Will Johnson the first. I love Kyle Kennard. I honestly think this guy's extremely underrated. He's been playing through an injury as well. You could also go after Josiah Stewart, but like Kamen Rucker's falling because people just don't believe in him. I do, so I'm going to take him here, and also it's a North Carolina guy. But, I mean, also, the only other team to take an edge is the Bengals so far in the second round. So it ends up making sense. At number 49 for the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to be going after edge for them. They ended up going after Will Campbell in the first, and so I'm going to go after Kyle Kennard, that I was speaking of, here in the second. Quality edge rush help is always paramount, and so being able to get him here is great. At 50 for the Arizona Cardinals, we went after an edge in the first round there with Jalen Walker. And so here, defense interior wise, I think Omar Norman Lott would make sense. He's just extremely inexperienced. You look at DeMonte Capehart, but he too has limited experience. I saw him in a first round very recently. But I'm actually going to take another defensive interior who is not even listed on here. And that's Caleb Banks. Caleb Banks out of Florida. He's been an absolute freak show. I do not have an official grade on him. That's why I'm going to use Joey Slackman as like his teammate as the placeholder value. But this is going to be his teammate, Caleb Banks. Back-to-back weeks with 7 pressures. This dude's been absolutely lighting it up. Sanjit, friend of, I guess he's a friend of the Twitter version of the show. Like, obviously we've talked with him, but he hasn't come on the show just yet. We've actually agreed to do some content together. But Sanjit, he's been a big guy for Caleb Banks, saying he's the number 1 defensive interior of the class. I can see it happening. I've seen the top end plays. It's just absolutely ridiculous. He tears up good interior offensive lines. So I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say he goes here at number 50. Caleb Banks out of Florida, not Joey Slackman. Number 51 for the Atlanta Falcons. Jesus, man. We ended up going after an edge in the first. Here in the second, I actually think Alec Iomaner wouldn't be a bad choice just because it's best player available. I know you guys have your pushback for that respectively. I do like the idea, though, of going after a safety. You got Jesse Bates there, but Simmons not necessarily going to be guaranteed to come back. And Lathan Ransom's been the best defensive back in college, if I'm not mistaken, grade-wise. But he's also, to me, just such a savage. Like, at the line of scrimmage, this guy also can play as a linebacker, too. He's just ridiculous. In the red zone, not many players in this class could remotely come close to him as well. So Lathan Ransom is going to be the pick. At number 52 for the Seattle Seahawks, again, Ben Morrison's returning in this for those of you guys who are asking. We went after Cam Williams in the first. Here in the second, you guys know me. I love the safeties. I want to continue pushing them up. So I'm going to do that. And we're going to get Xavier Watts, top tier ball hawking safety there out of Notre Dame. At number 53, we got the Washington Commanders. And Alec Iomaner, top choice for me. But I'm actually going to go after a player that I normally go much earlier in the draft. Where is he? Donde está? Davison Igbinosun. He just ended up having a bad game this past week. Technically, he literally had 1 completion allowed with a pass breakup on 4 targets. But, Igbinosun's being misused, and being able to allow him to develop with Marshawn Lattimore as a mentor, to me, is going to be great. The physicality, not many corners can actually physically stop a receiver the way Igbinosun can. At 54 for the Houston Texans, we went after defensive interior in round 1. And here in round 2, makes a lot of sense. Let's go Tyler Booker. I mean, the only reason he slipped is just because positional value. I mean, there's so many tackles in this class that could be guards as well, that it just ends up working out that way. At 55 for the Broncos, I feel like they're pretty happy with the receiving core. Devon Bell just randomly has been really good. I didn't have a grade on him, so that's why I didn't like the pick when it happened. But I'm actually going to be going right here for an offensive tackle because I assume that based on Garrett Bowles having the contract that he does, he probably won't be coming back. And so I'm actually going to go after Josh Connerly Jr. here, who is the former left tackle for Bo Nix. He has potential chance of having to be kicked into guard, but the top end reps of Josh Connerly are absolutely ridiculous. Like, he can legitimately shut down a 270-pound edge rusher. And if you can end up working with that, you can end up having yourself an absolute steal there in Josh Connerly. At 56 for the Los Angeles Chargers, I ended up not going after a wide receiver in the first round with Deion Walker, and that ended up working out because Alec Iomaner somehow is still here. Top tier boundary receiver, and even though he has air quotes drop issues with his quarterback, I don't really put the blame on him. So I'll put that there. And number 57 for the Baltimore Ravens, we went after wide receiver in Luther Burden in round number 1. Here in round number 2, you can go after offensive line, or you can also go after corner. An unlimited quantity of options available. Looking at the guys who I have best available, technically it would be Preston Hodge, but he's also out for the year. I actually need to add a plus mark there for him, but he has a potential MCL tear. But looking at the next best guy, I got Dalen Everett here, which actually I need to drop Dalen Everett's score because I ended up giving him like a -2 for not actually having good ball production. But I actually think his physicality would work really well here. I do think they value a little bit more athleticism though. Ephesians Prysock doesn't fit that. Jason Marshall doesn't really fit the bill either. So looking at the next best corner for them, Kobe Bryant. Oh, actually, I didn't end up adding Mello Dotson. And Mello Dotson's really, really good. Like, he's right there with Kobe Bryant for me, so he'd be right there. Jacob Parrish, I think I have above him, but he's 5'10", so just not going to be someone who goes above Mello Dotson, who's, I believe, 6'1", 190. Yeah. So I'm actually going to go Mello here. We're going to roll the dice on Mello Dotson. First off, sick-ass name, but also, I think he's a little bit worse coverage-wise than Kobe Bryant, but he's just all around. You see the it factor with him a lot more, and somebody that, since he will be a corner too, doesn't necessarily have to mold to like instant starting qualifications as going up against the best of the best receivers. And the growing pains, I feel, will be not nearly as present as maybe what I think it could be based on the Ravens being able to have like Kyle Hamilton back there and have, well, even though Kyle Hamilton's everywhere, like blitzing a lot too, but being able to essentially have less, I would say Mello Dotson has a lower standard that he has to complete in order to be in an upgrade. And I think his ceiling is extremely high. So he has both a short-term and a long-term impact that is positive. I picked number 58 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could look at running back here with like Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson. Quinshon's been kind of ass this year. I think he should return to school, but like wide receiver wise, I told you guys we'd be looking at it here in this round, and a lot of good choices. You can talk about Trey Harris. Now it makes a lot of sense to potentially go after Trey, but Jalen Rawls as well. I mean, he's a boundary receiver who's really good after the catch. And he started out the year with like an 18% contested catch rate. He got up to pretty much 40%, and he has 60% on his career. So this is somebody who's fantastic, great after the catch. Hurt his ankle, but I believe it was an ankle injury that got him out for the year. But he's coming back for the Senior Bowl, which is super exciting. The only other name I'd like to mention here is Ty Felton. Ty Felton's been having himself a career year. Really solid after the catch, too. He's just a really good player, but he did have 3 drops this past week, which is why his drop rate dropped to 8%. No pun intended. He ended up having 3 drops, so I am going to actually opt for Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State. People probably won't love that, but people who actually watch Jalen Royals, I think, will absolutely agree that he's well worth that pick. Number 59 for the Green Bay Packers. This is easy for me. You got Ashton Gillette, Landon Jackson, Jack Sawyer available on the table. Donovan Azurewaku as well. And you can't tell me that Jeff Hafley is going to pass on his own guy. We're going to go Donovan Azurewaku here. Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator, also was the coach of Donovan Azurewaku there at Boston College before last year. Pick number 60 for the Buffalo Bills, ended up going after an defensive interior around number 1. I think edge makes a lot of sense here based on the quantity of dudes who I just ended up naming. Mike Green might be the dude that they end up going with. Like, Mike Green is kind of freaky, and he has the exact same grade, essentially, spoiler alert, as Donovan Azurewaku for me. He definitely could. I'm trying to remember, where the hell is Marshall? I forget where like Marshall actually is geographically, but I do think he can actually play in cold weather. They played against Ohio State earlier in the year, so they're used to that Big Ten type of environment. Braden Swinson, dark horse candidate for a 2nd round pick. You can't really go wrong though. I'm gonna rock with Mike Green. I really like Mike Green. At number 61, we got the Eagles, and ended up taking JT Tuimoloau in the first. Could have ended up sniping one of these guys in the second. Didn't expect them to fall like that, but at this pick, I'd really want to go Harold Fannin. They just value blocking so much that I just highly doubt it. You could look at Jonas Savania here to be a flexible piece where you can play him at guard, have him be that backup until he fixes up his game to play right tackle. You could also do the same thing with Armand Membu, who I absolutely adore. Now, other positions, again, tight end, this is just such a weird spot for the Eagles because I think tight end's a position they really should look at. You could look at defensive interior here. You also could look at linebacker. I mean, it's not off the table. I don't know if you guys are going to pay Zach Bond the quantity of money that he might be earning right now. But, getting someone like Chris Paul, Barrett Carter would make a lot of sense as well. It's not an easy spot to choose. It's really not. And, I actually to be fair, I really do like the idea of Armand Dembu on this squad. He's done a fantastic job this year. Obviously, you can see this bait like in simplistic terms from his progression, but also every single week or every single defensive player that I look at, their worst week is always against Missouri, and a lot of times it's against Armand Dembu. So, you know what? Let's roll the dice. I mean, he's super athletic. I think he'd be a great guard in the short run. And this is, like, you look at the age of the offensive line, the only thing that's standing, like, out of the pack is Lane Johnson's age. And I don't think Lane's going to be there forever. If Armand Membu's available, you also are disarming the Chiefs, as well as potentially even the Lions. And I think that could end up being really beneficial for you guys when it all comes said and done. Number 62 for the Buffalo Bills. So I already went after Mike Green as well as Walter Nolan. You guys are in a good spot. You guys are in a very good spot. I think wide receiver wise, when you can get someone like Trey Harris or Ty Felton, it'd make a lot of sense. I'd want someone who's a little bit more of a route running separator. And so I will go Ty Felton and just hope that the drops don't become an issue. Even with the 3-drop game, he's only at 8% for the year, which that's kind of insane. That shows that he was actually really productive beforehand without having the drop issues. But he also did have a couple of touchdowns this past week. So, got to give him credit where also criticism is due. Pick number 63 for the Kansas City Chiefs. Could see them looking at, well, did we go defensive interior round one? We went after corner and Siobhan Ravel. It's a weird spot to be in. Because Omar Norman Lott, TJ Sanders. I mean, TJ Sanders is a little bit on the smaller side, 290 at 6'4". But TJ Sanders could be a really good pick at this point. I mean, just being able to get that punchy guy who can also kick out and be an edge on certain plays. Harold Fannon's the other guy who I'm thinking of. Offensive tackle, don't roll the dice on more rookies. Just let your guys develop, get a veteran maybe. But TJ Sanders is going to be the guy. We're going to go with that. And then ending off this draft, we have the Lions, and you guys know where I'm going. Tate Ratledge is just the dog. He ended up having a little bit of a struggle bus week there versus Tennessee, but he's bounced back. He's a very quality guard, and you don't need flash when you're the Lions. You just need results, and that's exactly what you're going to be getting with a high floor player like Tate Ratledge. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching, showing the love that you always do. Happy Thanksgiving week. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. See you on the far side. Peace.